I'm Dr. Kerri Wilson. I'm the Program Chair of Christian Counseling at Texas Bible College. In this session, I will be talking to you about how to manage stress without it managing you. By the end of this session, you should be able to identify and define different types of stress, understand the effects of chronic stress, recognize personal stress patterns, and identify ways to manage stress effectively. Take a moment and look at this picture. This is a cast sheep. This happens to a sheep when the weight of the fleece overwhelms it and causes it to stumble and fall and roll over onto its back. The sheep will die within a few hours if it's not turned back over onto its feet, and the sheep usually can't help itself and needs assistance to get back up. Have you ever felt like this? If so, you may not be managing your stress well. Have you heard that stress is bad? Believing stress is bad is misguided because stress can be good or bad. Stress is good or bad based on the effect it produces and how you respond to it. Stress is an automatic response to events that demand change. Believing that stress must be eliminated is also misguided because stress happens to everyone, and stress is part of everyday life, so stress can't be eliminated. Someone once told me that they hated the term stress management because it makes you think you can't get rid of stress. He was right. You can't get rid of stress. The goal is not to get rid of stress. The goal is to learn how to manage stress. So let's talk about the difference between good stress and bad stress. Good stress is motivational, and motivational stress is helpful. Motivational stress triggers your natural fight or flight response. This motivates you to take healthy action for adjusting to the needed changes. Bad stress is stress that is mismanaged and unhelpful. Mismanaged stress often leads to chronic stress. Chronic stress is unhelpful because it causes a freeze state of agitation and hypervigilance. When in a freeze state, you fail to take healthy action for adjusting to needed changes. So let's consider 3 types of stress so that we can have a better understanding. These 3 types of stress are acute stress, episodic stress, and chronic stress. Acute stress is short-term stress from daily pressures, such as meeting deadlines and a rush of customers. Acute stress happens in the moment, but it dissipates soon after the moment is over, like when you're riding a theme park ride or when you're doing an urgent work task. Episodic stress is frequent acute stress events that lead to a sense of chaos, such as repeated tight deadlines. Episodic stress happens when there is constant rushing and a feeling of crisis. Chronic stress is long-term, ongoing stress with no end in sight, such as a toxic work environment or ongoing health issues. Chronic stress happens when there is continuous pressure that never leaves and impacts your overall well-being. When considering the impact of these types of stress, it is important to recognize your stress response. Your stress response reveals how you are managing your stress experience. Stress response can be physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Symptoms of a physical response may include increased heart rate, shallow breathing, or muscle tension. Symptoms of a mental or an emotional response may include irritability, anxiety, racing thoughts, or difficulty concentrating. And symptoms of a spiritual response may include a question of purpose, crisis of faith, disconnection, or feelings of hopelessness. You may even experience all of these responses. Practicing self-awareness in the context of your stress response will help you gauge if your stress management is effective or ineffective. So, are you mishandling stress? Even though stress can't be removed entirely from your life, it can be managed more effectively. If your stress level has reached a chronic state, you're most likely mishandling it with unhealthy behavior patterns. To be able to function more productively and from a healthier foundation, you must learn how to manage it in ways that benefit rather than hinder your life. So this visual will help us clarify how stress experience and stress response work. This is called a stress bucket, and I got this from Brabham and Turkington. And you'll notice at the top, the visual demonstrates that stress flows into you like water flows into a bucket. At the top, or at the bottom right, you see the size of the bucket determines how much water it can hold. In a similar way, you have a limit on how much stress you can handle. Notice the tap at the bottom left. If the tap is turned on, excess water can flow out in a controlled manner. But when the tap is turned off, the water cannot be released, so it flows uncontrolled over the top and spills out everywhere. When there is too much water in the bucket overflows and the water creates a mess. The same is true for you. When you have too much stress, when you experience chronic stress, you overflow. This overflow creates problems with your health and with your relationships. The tap represents stress management. When the tap is working well, good coping happens. When the tap is not working well, bad coping happens. There is a relationship between stress levels and performance. There is an optimal stress zone for peak performance, but there are consequences of too much stress and of too little stress. Now notice, I said there are consequences of too much stress and too little stress. This speaks to what I said earlier about good stress and bad stress. Good stress is motivational, so that indicates that you need to have some kind of stress in your life to be motivated. This is true here on this bell curve. Too much stress or too little stress, both of these have consequences. Low performance and low stress results in being lame. So this would cause you to be inactive and bored and not motivated. So that's the consequence of absence of stress. High performance at a stress level that is beyond the optimum stress threshold results in being diseased, where you begin to feel stress overload. This leads to fatigue, exhaustion, emotional problems, and eventually burnout and breakdown. Functioning at high performance within the optimum stress threshold results in healthy tension, which leads to motivation and focus. There's a fine line between optimum stress and stress overload. So you need to be intentional about avoiding stress overload. Your personality influences how you experience and respond to stress. This is the DISC personality profile. And if you'll look at it, you'll see DISC. It starts at the top left and goes over to the top right, down to the bottom right, and then over to the bottom left. You'll notice across the top in the middle, the word outgoing. And there at the bottom middle, you'll notice the word reserved. And over to the left side, you see the word task. And over to the right side, you see the word people. The two top letters, the D and the I, those people are outgoing people. And the two bottom styles, those people are reserved people. Now, if you look at the top left, the green D, that personality style is the dominant driver. The dominant driver is outgoing and task-oriented. Over to the top right is the red I. This is the inspiring influencer. Those people are outgoing, but they're people-oriented. Looking down at the two bottom styles, the bottom right is the blue S. That is the steady supporter, and that personality style is reserved and people-oriented. And then the bottom left is the yellow C, which is the cautious contemplator. The C style is reserved and task-oriented. So the D style, or the dominant driver, prefers control, is stressed by loss of control, and stress signs include irritability and stubbornness. The I style, or the inspiring influencer, wants to be liked, is stressed by isolation or repetitive tasks, and stress signs include emotional responses and impulsiveness. The S style, or the steady supporter, prefers structure and is stressed by changes. Stress signs include avoidance of conflict and overcautiousness. And the C style, the cautious contemplator, craves clarity and is stressed by chaos and lack of information. And the stress signs include withdrawal and over-reliance on logic. So recognizing your personality type can help you understand your stress responses and can help you with better stress management. You can take a free DISC personality profile assessment at crystalknows.com. And I recommend that you utilize that resource and take a DISC personality profile assessment so that you can understand your personality type. And as you read the information, think of it in terms of how you manage stress and how you experience stress. Think about stress, mismanaged stress, and the impact of mismanaged stress like throwing a pebble into water. When you throw a pebble into water, a small ripple effect is created. A small pebble has impact, but the impact is insignificant and the ripple eventually disappears. But when you throw in a boulder or an even bigger object, it causes a big splash and creates a wave. A wave has more impact and is more far-reaching. When it's something catastrophic, like an earthquake, it creates a tsunami. And of course, we know that a tsunami is destructive. Stress should be managed to avoid overwhelming effects. Stress should be managed to avoid tsunamis in our life. When you employ techniques to manage stress, you prevent it from escalating. When it is managed, each stressor you face remains like a small pebble. When it is mismanaged, however, each stressor builds on the last one and eventually becomes destructive, not only to yourself, but also to others. So let's talk about a practical plan of action. Here are a few practical strategies that have been proven to be effective for healthy stress management. We all know that exercise is effective and beneficial to our health. Incorporating physical activity has been proven to reduce stress. It can reduce stress in as little as 20 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. But there are 2 points that you need to understand about exercise. For exercise to be effective, it has to be something that you enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy doing it, then you won't do it consistently. And for exercise to have a lasting impact, it has to be consistent. Now, I could go out and walk for 20 minutes today, and it would help me today in the moment if I'm feeling stressed. However, if I wait a whole month before I go out and walk again, well, during that time between now and a month from now, I've done nothing to alleviate my stress. So what I did today is not going to help me for a whole month. It's only going to help me for the day that I did it, which is why consistency is so important. So you have to choose something that you enjoy doing so that you can ensure that you'll remain consistent with it. Also, exercise can't be excessive. Excessive exercise actually increases your stress level. Another tool for helping you relieve your stress is spending time in nature. Spending time in nature helps you feel refreshed and calm. Research has proven that 20 minutes, as little time as 20 minutes, can provide a significant improvement in reducing the impact of stress. So there are various ways you can experience nature. You can go outside. Some people like to play golf. Some people like to ride a bike. Some people like to go hiking or walking. Some people like to fish. Some people like to kayak. There's all kinds of different ways that you can be outside and enjoy nature, and those things will help you relieve stress simply because you're outside in nature. Another way that you can experience nature is just by looking out of a window. If you can't go outside, if you have an office and you work, 8 hours a day, and it's during the winter time, and you get to work before daylight and you leave work after daylight, you're very limited in how much time you can use to go out in nature. So just going to a window and looking out the window can provide the same effect as being outside. Another way to experience nature is just looking at a picture of nature. You can look at a picture in a book or on a screen. That has the same amount of impact. And then finally, listening to nature sounds. Another tool to help relieve stress is brain dumping. So, brain dumping is simply writing down your thoughts, and this can help you clear your mental clutter. Two ways that I recommend for brain dumping would be journaling or making a list. I have found that writing my thoughts down in a journal, or I wrote a blog for a while, and it actually acted as a way of relieving my mental clutter and calming my mind so that I could think more clearly, and more rationally. Writing my thoughts in a way that was helping other people really benefited me. Other people like to just journal and keep their journals private. Also, making a list, making a to-do list, making a list of things you're thankful for, making a list of things you need to remember, making a list of things you need to forget, making a list of things that are bothering you, whatever that list could be. Making a list will take those things out of your mind and put it out on paper so you don't have to worry about them anymore. I was working at a school, in public school, several years ago, and I was very, very stressed. The environment I was working in was toxic, and I found myself being very, very negative to my coworkers in terms of complaining and talking negative about leadership, and several different ways that I was showing negativity. And it really started bothering me because I knew I wasn't being a very good witness. So I decided that I was going to address my negativity, and my negativity was being brought on by stress. So I actually drew a stop sign, and I put the stop sign on my whiteboard next to where I taught. And whenever I noticed that I was being negative, I would stop, and I would, out on the margins around the stop sign, I would write 3 things that I was thankful for. And that really helped me release positive thoughts. And as I was releasing positive thoughts, meant that I had to think about positive thoughts, which shifted me from my negative thoughts. So it worked for that. And then as I went throughout the day, I could read it and read those things again, which would help me stay focused on something positive rather than on something negative. So that's a form of making a list. Another tool that can help you relieve your stress is to organize your life. And my husband uses this method, and you can find it in his book, Rhythm. My husband's name is Eugene Wilson, and he wrote the book Rhythm. So I recommend that you get that book because it will go into this method in more detail. But this method is called Do, Delete, Defer, and Delegate. So this involves you categorizing your responsibilities into lists. And these lists would be the things that you must do, what you can delete, what you can defer to a future time, and what you can delegate to someone else. So I recommend that you look that up, and look up my husband's book, Rhythm, and read about how he employed that in his life and how it helped. And then finally, another tool is time blocking. So time blocking is allocating specific times for tasks, and this will help you manage your workload more efficiently. So your brain works best when it's like calm water. These tools, as well as other tools that I haven't even mentioned, can help you maintain the calm water. Calm water means less negative stress effect, which means you can be more productive. So from this session, you have gained understanding of stress and its impact. You can now recognize your stress responses, and you can have tools for managing stress more effectively. So this matters because burnout is a significant problem. Mismanaged stress is causing ministers to walk away from ministry, and mismanaged stress is killing people. So you say you're called to do a work for God. Well, you can't do God's work when you're dead. Of course, we know we can't do God's work when we're physically dead, but neither can we do God's work when we're mentally dead, when we're emotionally dead, or when we're spiritually dead. So stress management is vital for maintaining a strong foundation for ministry productivity and longevity. Now, I've also provided some handouts that you can access. I have a sheet that has some session reflection questions, and I would encourage you to spend some time, take some time alone with the Word of God, and sit down and read the questions and answer honestly. self-reflect, practice self-awareness in response to the questions on what we've talked about here today, so that you can create an intentional plan of action on how you're going to move forward from here. I've also provided some self-assessments that you can take that will help you identify what the stress looks like for you and what it means for you. So I recommend that you use those assessments, you download those assessments and use them to help yourself become a better person. And God bless.